And Vince put his hand out and stopped him. He goes, by the way, you're fired. Now get the out of my building.
The Ultimate Warrior might be one of the greatest legends in WWE history, but he had a legal battle with Vince McMahon not once, but twice. It first happened when he was fired in 1993 for trying to find a way around WWE's drug testing and rehab policy, the same reason why Davey Boy Smith was axed. Warrior filed a wrongful termination suit during a time when Vince McMahon and WWE were under serious pressure amidst the steroid scandal. The second occasion was after WWE released the Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior documentary. His lawsuit was dismissed 3 years later in 2009, but thankfully the two parties finally got on good terms in 2014 when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. But not everybody is that lucky. Suing Vince McMahon or WWE can be a death sentence on one's wrestling career, or at least that's how it used to be. Before there were plenty of options for wrestlers to go to, and before there was good money to be made from wrestling on the independent scene, but most wrestlers and talent involved were at WWE and Vince McMahon's mercy. Now we can't imagine the number of people who have had settlements outside of court, but there have been a few brave people who have sued the sports entertainment juggernaut, and in some cases the man responsible for it all. In some situations, superstars have even walked out of court with the W. These are some of the superstars who took Vince McMahon and WWE to court. Nails is a name that many of you may not have heard of unless you were a hardcore fan of WWE back in 1992. Kevin Wackles had a bitter end to his WWE career after he had a verbal confrontation with Vince McMahon over a pay dispute. McMahon denied there being any issues with his pay, and an infuriated Nails physically assaulted the boss by choking him violently, according to Bret Hart, who was standing outside the room and heard what happened. It's safe to say that Nails' WWE career was done, but the bitterness between him and WWE continued in a series of lawsuits. Nails sued WWE and McMahon for a wrongful termination by claiming that Vince McMahon sexually assaulted him. In 1994, during the steroid trials, Nails was the only one to personally testify against Vince McMahon by stating that he was pressured by his boss to take steroids. It shouldn't surprise you that he would go on to have a short-lived wrestling career that ended in 2001. Demolition also never enjoyed the same success in wrestling outside of their 4-year stint in WWE. They are considered one of the greatest tag teams of all time, but they have had a long-standing issue with the company and Vince McMahon. Axe and Smash, the original duo of Demolition, sued Vince McMahon in 1992, a year after they left WWE. The lawsuit from the duo cited issues such as breach of contract, fraudulent misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation, conversion, and wrongful termination, among others. The lawsuit was settled in WWE's favor in 1997. Raven and Buff Bagwell also had lawsuits that didn't go their way in the mid-2010s. Raven stated that he had an issue with the language on the WWE contract, where they were all labeled as independent contractors while being treated as employees with no healthcare benefits. He and Bagwell wanted royalties for appearances on the WWE network, and the lawsuit led to them being frozen out of the company. He told Chris Jericho in 2015 that had Vince McMahon lost the lawsuit, it would have cost him up to $225 million. While his intentions were noble because he wanted to cause a change in the wrestling industry, the lawsuits from him and Bagwell were quietly dropped in 2017. That lawsuit went under the radar, but one that didn't was Sable's lawsuit against WWE in 1999. After 3 years in the company, she quit and filed a whopping $110 million lawsuit against her former employer, citing sexual harassment and unsafe working conditions. She claimed that she was asked to expose her body on live TV against her wishes, and that a certain somebody, we definitely don't know who that is, defecated in her bag on her last day. Ugh. In terms of the right and wrong of it all, legends like Jim Ross dismissed her by saying that she was a needle mover and wouldn't have been let go by WWE. He added that she used it as a way to get out of wrestling and get into Hollywood. They eventually settled out of court, and Sable returned for a brief WWE run in 2003. Interestingly enough, WWE sued her future husband Brock Lesnar years later for breaching his non-compete clause and lost to him. One of the most famous and rare cases of superstars beating Vince McMahon in court was when Jesse the Body Ventura walked out with the W in 1991. Although Ventura primarily wrestled for other promotions such as AWA and NWA, he also competed for WWE in the 1980s before retiring and switching to commentary. Although Vince McMahon told Jesse Ventura that he didn't pay royalties to superstars over home video sales, it was later revealed that he was lying. Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, and Cyndi Lauper were among those who received regular royalties. The unfair compensation and the fact that Vince McMahon lied to him are what led to Jesse Ventura having the lawsuit awarded in his favor. He ended up winning $833,000 for the lawsuit and an additional $8,625 for other non-video merchandise. These were far from his only issues with Vince McMahon, but we're only scratching the surface on a much bigger topic. Perhaps the biggest W against WWE in court that nobody knows about is that of Chuck Austin. Who? He's the man who was supposed to be awarded $27 million for a major injury he suffered in the ring. In late 1990 at an event in Tampa, enhancement talent Chuck Austin teamed up with Lanny Poffo to take on the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. The finish of the match was the Rocker Dropper move where Jannetty hit a standing leg drop. Chuck Austin landed in the worst way possible and suffered serious spinal injuries, stating that it took them over 20 minutes to get medics for him because WWE didn't have them at the time. Chuck Austin was just an inexperienced wrestler getting started, and that botched move resulted in C4, C5, and C6 damage to his vertebrae, paralyzing him from the neck down and causing further damage to his nervous system. He took WWE to court for $3 million, but WWE fought back, even employing an interesting tactic to prove their point. They set up mats in the courtroom and had Marty Jannetty hit the Rocker Dropper on Dean Malenko, who was working as a referee at the time. The court sympathized with Chuck Austin and he was awarded $27 million. WWE filed an appeal and eventually settled out of court for $10 million, with Marty Jannetty ordered to pay an additional $1.5 million. Now, WWE could have had to shell out a lot more money if the lawsuit from 53 different wrestlers went against their favor. In 2016, a massive group of former WWE superstars filed a joint lawsuit against WWE for repeated head injuries that have caused CTE. Many of the names might sound familiar to you: Paul Orndorff, Luther Reigns, King Kong Bundy, Mr. Fuji, the wife of Viscera, Demolition's Axe, and the Second Smash are among the many names involved in the class action lawsuit. Judge Vanessa Bryant in Hartford, Connecticut dismissed the lawsuit in 2018 and even ordered the wrestler's lawyer, Konstantin Kiros, pay WWE $500,000 in compensation for their legal fees. In 2021, she openly criticized Kiros for delaying the process with irrelevant information and not paying WWE the compensation that he was ordered to. WWE walked out with the W in most cases, but do you think that they had a big advantage in the eyes of most judges and courts? Let us know what you think in the comments below.